Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, and thank you, Mr. Dodaro, for the presentations that you do. I'm always impressed with them. I try to be at as many of them as I possibly can. You've testified before the Budget Committee several times and provided us with good information, and you've heard my frustration over how the President gives us a budget, but it's a different format than the Senate's budget, which is a different format than what the appropriators use, which is a different format than what the authorizers use, because they're shredded into several different appropriations budgets. And then there's the Government Performance and Results Act and its modernization, and I'm not sure that that follows the same format either. I'm trying to figure out ways to make that a little more effective. That's probably what I heard when I first ran for office, that how come the government agencies don't say what they're going to do and then show if they did it? Also, you turn out the reports and we don't always follow them, and the agencies don't always follow them, and consequently a lot of good advice goes by the wayside. Can you think of any way that we can provide incentive for these people to save, to do these things? I mean, you get a lot of incentive if you give money away, but you don't get a lot of incentive if you take money away. Do you have any suggestions for us on that?
Yeah, I think it's very important that the Congress, though, before the incentives, see, part of the problem is even the agencies can't identify these opportunities for savings very efficiently because there is not this comprehensive program inventory. Like, for example, Senator, when we first started this work, we found there were 82 programs on teacher quality spread across 10 different federal agencies. So in OMB, it would really be the only potential place to identify these things across government in addition to GAO, and they don't have the tools to be able to do this because there is no this inventory. We have to go in and actually dig it out and identify them ourselves. We found well over 150 STEM programs, 47 different employment training programs spread across the government. So even the executive agencies, even if you gave them incentives, it's difficult for them to identify and act on these areas because they're cross-agency. And most of the big dollar savings require multiple agencies to agree, and getting them to agree is difficult. So you really have to incentivize OMB to be able to lead within the executive branch in reducing these areas of deficiencies, but they don't have the full capacity to do these things, and that's why default comes to the Congress, unless the Congress acts and eliminates these programs. But we're hampered along with everybody else. There are incentives. The Congress has passed these funds, for example, in the information technology area, where they can set up working capital funds. So if they save money in the information technology arena, they can reinvest it and have some of those savings back in the working capital fund. These things, though, require a fundamental shift in the culture of government. The culture of government is to spend money and to make payments as fast as possible. And that culture needs to change, and we need to be more careful in how we go about these activities. The only thing I've found successful is rigorous congressional oversight and forcing the agencies to explain why they're not taking action on some of these recommendations. I was very pleased last year to see the Congress pass, for the first time, legislation requiring agencies to identify what they're doing to address open GAO recommendations in the budget submissions to the Congress. So that'll start with the budget submissions next year. I think that's very helpful. Each year I write to each agency in the federal government and identify open GAO recommendations. About 77% of our recommendations get implemented, but not all. And so there's many more things that could be done to save money. But it's hard to incentivize them and then have them responsible when they don't have the tools necessary to be able to do this. The other frustration I've had is Congress has passed the Digital Accountability and Transparency Act in 2014. That was to have standard account information. We found that the budget information was fairly accurate in reporting, but the award data, the grants and contracts, we found it was between 0 and 1% of the information was accurate with all based when we checked it back to the original award records. So when you don't have good inventories, you don't have good proper accounting on information that's accurate, and you don't have good cost information. And then the other area that you mentioned is evaluations. You know, what we find in a lot of these programs, they've never been evaluated to know whether they're successful or not. You know, it's really incumbent on GAO or someone else to say these programs are not effective before they get stopped, and even then they don't get stopped very effectively, as opposed to the agencies having to prove that the program is effective and should be continued. So that's my best advice. I know it's not an easy answer, but that's been my experience.
So you're actually saying that the GIPRA Modernization Act is not working?
Not the way it should be.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate that, and I appreciate all those duplication numbers that you put out. I've been talking about all of the housing duplication that we have spread over 20 agencies who don't coordinate with each other. Nobody sets goals, nobody follows up on them, and consequently the housing programs aren't working. Just to mention one of the ones that you've mentioned before.
That's exactly.
Every agency has financial literacy money, but it's not working with us. So I'll yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Senator Langford.